23 years ago, my mother's side of the family, lost their youngest brother. That was my uncle. And it was the first time, I think, that I actually experienced what it was like to lose somebody that I knew personally. Before that, I had lost my grandfather on my mother's side. But I was young. And honestly, I don't remember most of my childhood beyond like 10, 11 onwards. It's like a lot of everything else that happened in between was just a blur with some highlights, low points, high points. And I have read in many places that when you're not able to remember your childhood, it's usually because some traumatic event happened that blocked you from remembering those things to protect you. Part of me just thinks is like, bro, you just forgot. Like, yeah. During that time, I was just about to start going to boarding school. I had literally was finishing the first school living certificate to prepare for good boarding school, apply for schools, getting interviews and things like that. That period of time when I was 10 and the way that I'm looking at it now from a different perspective, being a little bit older, I think it set the pace for the way that adults prepare children for dealing with death. Because there wasn't very much of a conversation, at least to my recollection, about what had happened. There probably was, but I don't think during that whole period, the children involved in the situation, like my cousins, me and my cousins were a little bit younger, we're the youngest cousins. I don't think we were really involved in the way that I believe that humans should be involved in the process of death and dying. I guess at different levels, different stages, whether you're a young child or an old adult, the way that you process death is different. But I don't remember any conversations around it for the kids, for me, to prepare me for what was happening, to help me understand what was going on. There were lots of adults, people that I've never met, people that I'd only met a few times that I didn't really like, coming into our space, sleeping in our house, cooking all this food, crying and screaming and making all these noises and organizing music. As a child, you're just supposed to be present. You're supposed to just do what they tell you to do. And it might be a microcosm, but I think it really paints a good idea of the way that children are treated in, I want to say, African communities. You're a child. You're not supposed to know these things. You will know when you grow up. But the question that I have is like, now that I've grown up, I still don't know how to deal with it. I still don't know how to deal with death. And none of that I'd experienced 23 years ago, and even after that with my other grandfather dying and my aunt dying and all these people who who die, nobody actually walks you through the process. And let's not even begin in terms of like counseling and therapy, because in Cameroon, where I was born and raised, and many countries in the African continent, you don't exactly book a therapy session when somebody dies. You're trying to find money to buy them a grave, to buy them a coffin. But September of last year, I lost my younger sister. I've not even been able to see her yet. And I have been struggling really to create any kind of content. I've done a few things here and there, some intermittent content creation and just making a few videos, writing a few articles, talking about how I'm feeling. But today I really just wanted to address this idea of the two significant changes that I've noticed as I'm reflecting through this process and thinking through it. And the reason why I want to do that is because you may be in that position. You may have lost somebody, or you may be in a position where you know that one day you're going to lose somebody and you don't even know how to address it. Because the fact of the matter is, if you live long enough, you will lose people that you care about. And I think we don't really talk about this much. We don't really prepare people for it. And as a 10-year-old watching all these adults dealing with all these things, nobody actually took me aside to say anything. And I still want to put this disclaimer. Maybe they did, but I don't remember if it was any helpful. And I also want to believe that they themselves were dealing with their own loss. Like, I want to empathize with the adults in my life. Like, my mom had just lost her younger brother. Like, why would you, forget about your own grief to help your children? And even as I'm asking the question, I'm like, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Children are supposed to be safe. Children are supposed to be cared for. I get that as an individual, as a human being, you have to be able to deal with your emotions, but a child is not prepared for that. And if you've agreed to bring this child into the world, it is your responsibility to prepare them for these things. We all know that we're going to lose people. The natural chronological order of things is that you hang out with your parents, they get old, get gray, they lose mobility, you take care of them, and then eventually they die in their sleep. Like, you know that. Or at least you want to believe that that's the way it's supposed to be. But that's usually how it happens. Usually you lose friends, co-workers, colleagues, you lose mentors. In our case, my family, my parents lost their child. Like, there is no chronological order that works. And even knowing that it's supposed to happen naturally at some point does not prepare you for it. I wasn't prepared for it. I am still not prepared for it right now. The most significant change that I noticed were two major themes: urgency and emptiness. And to talk about these things in a video or in an article in one go is a little bit heavy for me, because I've been thinking about this for months. I've been asking myself, like, why do I suddenly feel so angry and so much rage and so much intensity? Between that time and now, I've felt this wave of emotions, especially negative emotions that are much more intense. And by urgency, what I mean by urgency is when my sister gone, there's just this feeling like you're going to die, Kamga. Everybody you know is going to die. Your parents are going to die. People you care about are going to die. Your friends are going to die. You need to figure out your shit. You need to tell them that you love them right now. You need to deal with what you have to deal with right now. Like this desire to be able to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish as soon as possible. That flame is there. Like, it's really intense. And in the beginning, it was worse than it is right now. Right now, it's still there. I can still sense it. It still keeps me awake. It still grounds me in many ways on things that I really think that I should not be doing that I want to do. That allows me to be able to move knowing that everything that I'm seeing is going to end at some point. But the weird thing about that specific urgency, of that newfound understanding that life is limited, is the counterbalance, which is the worst thing that I thought could ever happen, is this emptiness. There is this Raisa-shaped hole in my heart. There's a shape of my sister that nothing can fit it. And I don't know how to describe it. And I'm going back to my uncle because I knew my uncle. There are pictures that we played and we hung out with. But that did not prepare me for this. And I don't think this will prepare me for whatever this I'm going to deal with. Like, there are friends that I talk to, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to deal with when this person leaves me. And it was, as I'm talking about it right now, I'm just thinking about that specific time where I think of the conversations that we had, how she taught me how to do chicken, the way she laughed, the kind of things that she found funny, her sense of style, her ambition, her humor, her cockiness, her stubbornness. Like, there's so much about my sister that I would not be able to find anywhere. There's so much about her that I wish I had told her that is gone. And so, as much as there's this urgency and this feeling of Kamga, you have to live, you have to do the thing, you have to create content, you have to show up every day, you have to show up for your family, you have to take responsibility, you have to fix your life, you have to build your family. That urgency is coupled by this emptiness of, why bother? You're going to die anyway. Sister is gone. There was nothing you could do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. You were not prepared for it. You were never prepared for it. What's the point? And as I was talking to you about this the other day with a couple of, I think I was talking with somebody, I don't remember who exactly I was talking to, but the picture that came to my mind was like, you have a car and you have a destination and you want to get there really fast. You know exactly where you're going. But then you find out that the car has no fuel. It's empty. There's no gas. So now you have to push the car every day until you get to your destination. And that's really what this video is going to be about. Like, those two feelings of the urgency to live life fully, to live life in ties with your knowledge and your beliefs, and the emptiness of knowing that a lot of things will never work out. And combining those two is very difficult for me. I'm having a hard time doing it. But the most interesting part for me is not even the doing part. It's the part that I think many people don't realize even how hard it is to really express it. And not just express it, but also the things that people do that make it worse. But that's not what I want to talk about today. So, the urgency is that knowledge that time will end. I wrote some of the things I wanted to talk about down. So, time will end and there's only stuff that I can do. And a rush was living fully and with purpose. And then the emptiness is the hole that left. Conversation will never have. Grief whose vocabulary I never learned. Which is why I started with my whole uncle and my parents, and just the general idea that people are not prepared to deal with loss. We don't talk about it. We don't deal with it. We don't address it. We don't bring it up to kids. I think what's missing in many African homes, and maybe many homes in general, is stable adults who are able to help children understand and cope and deal with emotions that they would have to eventually face as adults. And if you're not prepared for it, they're going to be shitty adults. And I think a lot of shitty adults exist, work, and in general. I might even be one of them. I just think most people aren't equipped to deal with loss. whether it's their own loss or other people's loss. Like, I see people who send me these really weird messages that I don't even want to bring up because just thinking about it makes me annoyed. Like, and it's just this idea, this is me digress, is this idea that because you are happy in a specific moment, because you are sort of feeling a level of joy at a very specific instance, then everything else that you dealt with is gone. I will post a picture of me hanging out with a friend, of me smiling. And the next thing I know, somebody is telling me, it looks like you've gotten over your sister's loss. And I'm like, fuck, bro, I was actually trying to. I was actually trying to feel that emptiness with something that was not unhealthy. Feel that emptiness with a certain level of gratitude and gratefulness from a friend who is present for me. And now you come in this moment to remind me of something that I'm trying to work on. And I'm supposed to be grateful for you. So, it's funny. It's funny that we've come to a world where we have so much connection, so much information, so much knowledge, so much data. But the basic human connection of how to deal with the things that are inevitable, such as death, are missing. So, I've been thinking, and I've come across some 3 ideas that may help you and that I'm hoping would help me. And 2 of them come from 2 books that I love to read and reread. One of them is The Alchemist, one of my favorite books, and the other one is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. The first line, which I thought I was going to reflect on to help with this process of dealing with this emptiness and this urgency, is cleaning one's minds of negative thoughts. It's one of my favorite scenes in the book. If you've not read the book, this is going to be a spoiler. I'm going to try to not spoil it. It's like page 48. I'm going to read like less than 2 pages, so it'll make sense. So basically, a shepherd boy is traveling and he finds this crystal shop maker, this crystal seller. And a card hanging in the doorway announced that several languages were spoken in the shop. The boy saw a man appear behind the counter. "I can clean up those glasses in the window if you want," said the boy. "The way they look now, nobody is going to want to buy them." The man looked at him without responding. "In exchange, you could give me something to eat." The man still said nothing, and the boy sensed that he was going to have to make a decision. So the boy goes on to clean it, etc. Then the merchant takes him to lunch, and then now the sermon continues. I don't want to really spoil the book. So the merchant says, "You didn't have to do any cleaning," he said. That's after they've eaten and everything. "The Quran requires me to feed a hungry person." "Well then, why did you let me do it?" the boy asked. And this is the part that I think was very interesting. "Because the crystal was dirty, and both you and I needed to cleanse our minds of negative thoughts." That's the first solution idea for this my problem between emptiness and urgency. The first idea is that one needs to find ways to clean one's mind of negative thoughts. The way that I've seen that works for me is really engaging with people that care about me. And the rage that I mentioned earlier, the anger that came with losing my sister, there were a few people who were able to hold that and make space for it. Because one thing that I realized when this happened, and that's still happening now, is that a lot of times when I get angry about a couple of things in my life or with my sister or my family or anything else, it's not really that I want anybody to actually help me fix it. I want somebody who can hold that. And most of the time I have to hold it myself, which can get exhausting. So those negative thoughts, which the boy was helping clean and the shop owner had, we all have those negative thoughts. And we need to find a way to clean those negative thoughts. And rather than alcohol, drugs, pornography, gratification of any sort, finding healthy ways to deal with these negative thoughts is something that I think everybody must be encouraged to do. And it's a lifelong journey. Instead of going to the gym, when I play basketball, when I was in Texas, I'm busting my knee. So now I'm having a hard time doing that. But what I do a lot more now is really just read and journal. And I'm coming back to this expression, this free from expression, where I try to minimize the anxiety that I have in terms of creating by just finding the least viable step to take. So this is one of them that I'm doing right now. Getting those negative thoughts out, whether it's talking with somebody, journaling, expressing them somewhat, can be very helpful. That's one way to deal with it. Because when you clear out those negative thoughts, like, I wish I could have done this, my sister differently, I wish I could have said this, I wish I could have done that, those things are not helpful. They're not necessary. And they're not going to bring her back anyway. But by clearing them, by partaking in activities that help strengthen my mindset, that help make me feel a lot more whole, then I sort of like wet the bed to plant new seeds and to use everything as manure to grow in a different way. Number 2 is becoming aware of what must be done within a given situation. And for that, we're going to read another paragraph from Man's Search for Meaning. Doesn't the final meaning of life too reveal itself, if at all, only at its end, on the verge of death? And doesn't this final meaning too depend on whether or not the potential meaning of each single situation has been actualized to the best of the respective individual's knowledge and belief? This last sentence. And doesn't this final meaning too depend on whether or not the potential meaning of each individual situation, each single situation, has been actualized to the best of the respective individual's knowledge and beliefs? When I saw this line again recently, it got me thinking about the fact that knowledge might be available to everybody, and we can have all these beliefs in the world. But if you don't believe in something, you don't believe in it. And if you believe in something, you believe in it. I know it sounds really stupidly simple, but think about the fact that I am a Christian. At least I want to believe that I am. I believe in Christianity. I believe that Jesus died for our sins. Now, that doesn't stop anybody who believes in Muhammad and Allah from believing in Muhammad and Allah. And that belief is my belief. Their belief is their belief. The knowledge that I have is my knowledge. Their knowledge is their knowledge. What's the point I'm trying to make here? The way that you gain meaning, according to this, is when you're able to actualize and make best use of each situation based on your individual knowledge and beliefs. What does this mean? The way that I'm able in many ways to cope about my sister's death is knowing that she's in heaven. And I say knowing loosely because knowledge will require evidence and facts, and I cannot prove to you that she is. I just know she is. So as much as it sucks that she's not here, and as painful as it is that she went the way she did, my belief in Jesus allows me to be able to cope. And the second part of this, because that's where it flows from there to this, is becoming aware of what can be done about a given situation. So how does a human being go about finding meaning? As Charlotte Buller has stated, all we can do is study the lives of people who seem to have found their answers to the questions of what ultimately human life is about, as against those who have not. Which was my third point. Studying the lives of people who seem to have found the answers. So when faced with this urgency of I need to live my life today, and faced with this emptiness of what's the point, the quickest way I have found to be able to get out of my head and do something about it is to look at people who've been able to, who else has been able to continue living after they've lost someone they care about? Who else has been able to transform this sorrow and sadness and rage into something beautiful and helpful and useful? Who else in life has been able to do that? Which is what drew me to The Alchemist and drew me to Man's Search for Meaning. And I'm also looking even within my family. I have cousins who've lost their dad. My parents have lost their daughter. Honestly, we're not doing very well. But there's some aspects of the way that they're dealing with it that I can learn from. I haven't been able to make a lot of content because I don't think that the reason why I made content before is any more relevant. Part of me died with my sister, and I can never get that part back again. When I'm facing the feelings that I'm facing right now, and I'm unable to talk with them, with other adults who are able to constructively provide feedback that helps me to address these issues, I only have to read books and think about them and introspect. And the one thing I'm really realizing is that people around me can't help me. It's a sad thing, but it's also in a way a good thing. But what this means is that I'm at the forefront of experiences that everyone around me is going to experience. And by dealing with this and finding helpful, useful ways to deal with it, then I may be able to help other people when the time comes. But it doesn't always have to be productive, because the first person I actually need to help right now is me. Which is why I'm selfish in making this video, because honestly, I have thought about all kinds of ideas. I've written down drafts. I've put down things that I've not posted. And I just can't bring myself to make any fun videos, reaction videos. Here are 7 reasons why I should get a divorce. I just find myself in the place where it's like, I'm dealing with something difficult, and I have to acknowledge that it's difficult, even if the people around me are either shitty at acknowledging it or just unable to acknowledge it. Their lack of ability to deal with me in my current state is not a reflection of something that is wrong with me or something that is wrong with them. They just don't have those skills. My earlier feeling of urgency and rage was very raw, very new to me as well. And I pushed a bunch of people away, destroyed a couple of relationships. And I'll own that. And if I could go back, I'll probably do the same thing. You know why? I didn't know any better. Now, I get a chance to learn. And I get a chance to figure things out. And a chance to teach other people. I think my sister will be pretty proud. Yeah. I still think about her a lot. I don't think I'll ever stop. People who think that you get over grief. Like, I know people who are mourning their parents 10, 20, 30 years after their parents are gone. If you don't know what to tell somebody who is losing, who has lost somebody, don't tell them shit like, oh, you look happier now. And let me just end this here, but the point I'm trying to make is this. Losing my sister has been difficult. Continues to be difficult. I have these two feelings of the urgency to live life and this emptiness from where she was, and that idea, that innocence of, oh, life will forever. And then now I find myself having to reconfigure my idea, my identity, and the way that wave of emotion is changing me, like the anger, the emotions, the intensity, the way that I feel now. Like, I even noticed recently that I actually maintain more eye contact now for whatever reason. I was thinking about it recently. I was like, I'm no longer afraid to look at people in the eye. I used to be like, oh my God, I can't look. But now I actually look at people, and I notice most people just don't know how to maintain eye contact. So yeah, we'll talk about some more things later. My name is Kamga. If you've watched up to this particular point, then you might as well subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next one.